Steve McQueen holstered his Colt with lightning speed and walked toward the legend, sitting in the shade 30 yards away. The Arizona wind carried dust devils across the Old Tucson backlot as the sun painted everything copper and gold. Then McQueen stopped in front of John Wayne and spoke the words that defined two different eras of American cinema. "You own the horizon, Duke. But I own the moment." The desert wind suddenly felt like the breath of history itself. If you respect the real Steve McQueen, subscribe to Steve McQueen Untold Legacy. November 1969. Old Tucson Studios, Arizona. The legendary Western filming location where countless classics had been born under the relentless desert sun. Wooden storefronts and weathered saloon doors that had witnessed more staged gunfights than any real frontier town. Temperature dropping towards 75 degrees as evening approached, but the rocks and buildings still radiated heat absorbed from another scorching Arizona day. The wind kicked up dust devils that danced between the buildings like ghosts of every cowboy who'd ever walked these manufactured streets. Empty tin cans rolled past hitching posts with metallic music that sounded like spurs on wooden boardwalks. This wasn't just a movie set. This was hallowed ground where American mythology had been created one frame at a time. John Wayne, 62 years old, sitting in the shade of the general store's wooden overhang, methodically cleaning a Winchester rifle that would soon help tell another story about men who solved problems with courage and conviction. Preparing for Rio Lobo, the Western that would continue his 4-decade dominance of the genre he'd essentially created through sheer force of personality and unshakable screen presence. Despite the back pain that constant horseback riding had inflicted over the years, he still filled space like a monument to everything America wanted to believe about itself. Steve McQueen, 39 years old, standing 50 feet away in the middle of the dusty street, practicing quick-draw techniques with a Colt .45 that had been perfectly balanced for maximum speed. Fresh from the worldwide success of Bullitt, the film that had proved modern action heroes could dominate box office lists traditionally controlled by traditional leading men. But today wasn't about car chases or contemporary stories. Today was about older skills, classic tests of screen authenticity in the place where Western legends were born. Two different generations of Hollywood royalty meeting in the place where American heroism had been defined for half a century. McQueen had been practicing for 30 minutes when Wayne appeared, settling into his chair with the careful movements of someone whose body carried the accumulated damage of decades spent making physical action look effortless. Not watching like a critic or competitor, but observing with the patient attention of someone who'd mastered every aspect of the craft both men practiced. The sound of McQueen's practice filled the afternoon air. Quick draws executed with mechanical precision. 6 shots fired in rapid succession, each bullet finding its target with accuracy that made superhuman speed look routine. Reload. Reset. Repeat. The rhythm of someone who understood that authentic performance required capabilities that went beyond acting into genuine skill. Wayne continued cleaning his Winchester without comment, methodical attention to a weapon that had to be ready for whatever the script demanded. Oil applied to metal with the care of someone who understood that tools were only as reliable as the maintenance they received. Professional preparation that had nothing to do with speed and everything to do with dependability. After 10 minutes of watching McQueen's demonstration, Wayne spoke without looking up from his rifle maintenance. "Fancy shooting, son." McQueen holstered his weapon and turned toward the voice that had narrated American values for an entire generation. "Thank you, Duke. Still working on getting faster. Speed's important, but it ain't everything." "What else is there?" Wayne looked up from his cleaning for the first time. Those eyes that had stared down 1,000 screen villains now focused on the young man who represented everything modern about contemporary heroism: presence, authority, making the audience believe that the fight's over before it starts. McQueen walked closer to where Wayne sat in the shade that seemed to bend around him like natural deference. "How do you do that without demonstrating capability?" "By carrying yourself like someone who's never lost a fight that mattered. By representing something bigger than individual skill or personal advantage. Such as justice, moral certainty, The kind of strength that doesn't need to prove itself because it simply is. Wayne returned his attention to the Winchester, running the cleaning rod through the barrel with practiced efficiency. "Steve, your quick-draw technique is impressive, really. Fastest I've ever seen from an actor. Appreciate that coming from you. But speed is just one tool in a big toolbox, and sometimes it ain't the right tool for the job." McQueen practiced another draw. Perfect execution delivered with casual competence that made years of training look effortless. What's the right tool? Depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to impress people with athletic ability, speed works fine. If you're trying to represent something they can believe in, you need something deeper. Like what? Wayne stood up slowly, the Winchester held casually in hands that had carried more movie weapons than any real gunfighter had ever owned. At his full height, he dominated the space around him without effort or intention. Just presence that came from representing ideas larger than individual capability. Like understanding what you stand for, what you won't compromise, what you represent when everything else gets stripped away. And you think that matters more than technical skill? I think technical skill serves the character. But when technical skill becomes the character, something important gets lost. Wayne walked to the edge of the wooden boardwalk, looked out across the desert landscape that stretched toward mountains painted purple by the setting sun. "Son, this country's built on the idea that good men can triumph over bad circumstances through determination and principle. I understand that. Western films serve that idea. They show audiences what strength looks like when it's applied to moral purposes. They demonstrate that individual courage can overcome systemic corruption." McQueen joined Wayne at the boardwalk edge. Two different approaches to screen heroism standing side by side in the place where American mythology had been manufactured for decades. And you think my approach doesn't serve that idea. I think your approach serves different purposes. Modern audiences want different things from their heroes than audiences wanted 20 years ago, such as realism, authenticity, heroes who look like they could exist in the real world instead of just on movie screens. Wayne turned back toward McQueen. "Your speed is real. Your dedication is real. The skill you've developed is something most people couldn't achieve with years of practice. Thank you, but real skill in the service of artificial situations can start to feel hollow after a while." "How so?" "Because audiences eventually figure out the difference between impressive performance and meaningful performance, between entertainment that amazes them and stories that inspire them." The wind picked up, carrying dust across the set with the persistent force that had shaped this landscape for centuries before Hollywood discovered it. Both men understanding that they were temporary occupants of something larger and more permanent than either of their careers. "Duke, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "When you look at this landscape, what do you see?" Wayne considered the question with the thoughtfulness that had made his screen presence more than just physical dominance. "I see the stage where American character gets tested, where individual strength meets challenges that require more than individual solutions. And when I look at it, what do you see?" McQueen studied the horizon that stretched unbroken toward distant mountains. "I see the background for moments that happen too fast to plan, where survival depends on reaction time and split-second decision-making. Both valid perspectives, but different perspectives. Different times require different heroes, son. Your approach works for audiences who've lived through changes I can't even imagine. My approach works for audiences who need to believe that some things never change." The sun was setting now, painting the entire landscape in shades of orange and red that made the movie set look like a monument to everything romantic about the American frontier. Both men understanding that they were witnesses to the end of one era and the beginning of another. "Steve," Wayne said, as he prepared to return to his rifle cleaning, "you've mastered something remarkable. Speed and skill that 99% of people will never achieve. I've had good teachers. But remember that skill serves story, and story serves something bigger than entertainment, which is hope. The belief that individual courage and moral clarity can overcome whatever challenges arise, that good men can triumph through determination and principle." McQueen drew his weapon one final time, not for practice or demonstration, but as a gesture of respect for the conversation they'd been having. Duke, you represent something that transcends individual movies or individual performances, such as certainty, moral authority that doesn't change with fashion or circumstance, the kind of strength that audiences can rely on regardless of what else changes in the world. And you represent the moment when that strength gets tested. The split second, when everything depends on being faster, smarter, more committed than whoever's trying to stop you. Wayne nodded with understanding that went beyond professional courtesy to genuine recognition of different approaches to the same fundamental challenge. Both necessary, both important, but different kinds of importance for different kinds of audiences. McQueen holstered his Colt with the lightning speed that had become his trademark, movement so fast it challenged human perception, weapon disappearing into leather before eyes could track the transition. Then he walked toward Wayne with measured steps that carried respect for what the older man represented, without deferring to it. Duke, you own this entire landscape. This horizon belongs to you. Every rock, every building, every story that's ever been told in places like this. 40 years of work in places like this. 40 years of defining what American heroism looks like on screen. Of representing values that millions of people want to believe in. Thank you. But the moment when those values get tested, the split second when everything depends on individual capability rather than collective ideals, that belongs to a different kind of hero. Your kind of hero. The kind of hero who lives in the immediate present rather than eternal principles, who survives through adaptation rather than adherence to unchanging codes. Wayne extended his hand. The gesture of one professional acknowledging another's dedication and competence. Steve, it's been an honor discussing craft with someone who takes it as seriously as you do. Honor's been mine, Duke. Keep practicing that draw. It's impressive skill that serves your characters well. I will, but I'll also remember what you taught me about serving something larger than skill. Which is that audiences don't just want to see what heroes can do. They want to understand what heroes represent. The two men shook hands as the Arizona sun disappeared behind mountains that had witnessed more changes than either man could imagine. Wayne returned to his rifle cleaning with the methodical attention that had characterized his approach to every aspect of his craft. McQueen remained on the boardwalk, understanding that he'd received instruction that went beyond quick-draw technique to the essence of screen legend. As Wayne prepared to leave for the hotel, he turned back one final time. Steve? Yes, sir? Your speed is remarkable. But don't let it become more important than what the speed accomplishes. What should it accomplish? Whatever the story needs to serve the audience, whether that's excitement, inspiration, or just the belief that individual capability can overcome overwhelming odds. Wayne walked toward his car with measured steps that seemed to claim ownership of every inch of ground they touched. McQueen remained in the gathering darkness, understanding that he'd witnessed the end of one era of American heroism and the beginning of another. The wind continued to blow across the Old Tucson set, carrying dust and memories and the understanding that some conversations marked transitions between what was and what would be. Steve McQueen holstered his Colt and told John Wayne, "You own the horizon, but I own the moment." Subscribe to Steve McQueen Untold Legacy for stories they never told you.